Article 4. Provisions relative to the practice of the teaching profession. Under Article 4 of Republic Act 7836 is about the rules and regulations that apply to the practice of the teaching profession in the Philippines. Under Article 4, we have Section 27. It is the inhibition against the practice of the teaching profession. Except as otherwise allowed under this Act, no person shall practice or offer to practice the teaching profession in the Philippines or be appointed as teacher to any position calling for a teaching profession without having previously obtained a valid certificate or registration in a valid professional license from the Commission. Section 27 of this article states that no one can work as a teacher or apply for a teaching job unless they have a valid certificate of registration in a professional license from the Commission. The Commission is the Professional Regulation Commission or PRC, which is the government agency that oversees the licensure and regulation of various professions in the country. This means that if you want to be a teacher, you have to pass the licensure examination for teachers or LET, which is a test that measures your knowledge, skills, and values as a teacher. You also have to register with the PRC and get a professional license that shows that you are qualified and authorized to teach. This license has to be renewed every 3 years by earning Continuing Professional Development or CPD credit units, which are points that you get by attending seminars, workshops, trainings, and other activities that enhance your professional growth and development. The purpose of this section is to ensure and promote quality education in the Philippines by making sure that only competent and qualified teachers are allowed to teach. This also protects the public from unqualified and incompetent teachers who might harm the students and the profession. This also gives recognition and respect to the teachers as professionals who have a vital role in nation building and development. Next is the Section 28. It is the penal provisions. It states that the following shall be punishable by a fine of not less than 5,000 pesos, no more than 20,000 pesos, or imprisonment of no less than 6 months, no more than 5 years, or both, at the discretion of the court. The following are: A. Any person who practices the teaching profession in the Philippines without being certified in accordance with the provisions of this Act. B. Any person who represents or attempts to use as his own certificate of registration that of another. C. Any person who gives any false or fraudulent evidence of any kind to the board or any member thereof in obtaining a certificate of registration as a teacher. D. Any person who impersonates any registrant of the same or different name. E. Any person who uses a revoked or suspended certificate of registration. F. Any person who, in connection with his name, otherwise assumes, uses, or advertises any title or description tending to convey or conveys the impression that he is a teacher without holding a valid certificate, and any person who violates or who abets the violation of any of the provisions of this Act. So, some examples of how this section is implemented are: last 2019, the PRC filed a case against a certain teacher named Jocelyn D, who was found to be teaching in a public elementary school in Quezon City without a valid certificate of registration and a professional license. She was arrested and charged with violation of Section 28 of Republic Act 7836. In 2018 also, the PRC revoked the certificate of registration and a professional license of a teacher named Mark Anthony C., who was caught using a fake professional license to apply for a teaching position in a private school in Cebu City. He was also fined and imprisoned for violation of Section 28 of Republic Act 7836. And also in 2017, the PRC suspended the certificate of registration and professional license of a certain teacher named Maria L., who was involved in a leakage of test questions during the licensure examination for teachers. She admitted that she gave money to John D., a personnel of the PRC, to get a copy of the test questions. Both of them were fined and imprisoned for violation of Section 28 of Republic Act 7836. Next is the Section 29. It is the appropriations. It states that such sums as may be necessary to carry out the provisions of this Act shall be included in the 1996 General Appropriations and Act thereafter. This section is about how much money the government will spend to make this law work. It says that the government will include the amount of money needed for this law in the budget of the year 1996. The budget is a plan of how the government will use its money for different purposes. Every year, the government makes a new budget and passes it as a law called the General Appropriations Act. This section means that the government will follow this law and set aside some money for it in the 1996 budget and every budget after that. Section 30. Implementing Guidelines. The Board shall formulate and adopt the necessary guidelines for the effective implementation of the provisions of this Act within 60 days of its approval. So this section is about the Board. This section is about how the Board will make the rules for following this law. The Board is a group of people who are in charge of making sure this law is carried out properly. The rules are called guidelines, and they will explain how the law will work in practice. The Board has to make the guidelines within 60 days after this law is approved by the President. The board shall submit to both committees on education, arts and culture, and the committees on civil service and professional regulation of the Senate and House of Representatives copies of the implementing rules and guidelines within 30 days after its promulgation. So this is about how the board will report to the Congress about the rules for following this law. The board has to send copies of the rules or implementing rules and guidelines to the committees that are related to education and civil service in the Senate and House of Representatives. The Senate and House of Representatives are the two chambers of the Congress, which is the law-making body of the government. The board has to do this within 30 days after they make the rules. Any violation of this section shall render the official or officials concerned liable under Republic Act Number 6713, otherwise known as the Code of Conduct and Ethical Standards for Public Officials and Employees, and other pertinent administrative and or penal laws. So this is about what will happen if the board does not follow this section. If the board fails to send the copies of the rules to the Congress within 30 days, they will be punished under another law called Republic Act 6713. This law sets the standards of behavior and ethics for public officials and employees such as the board members. The punishment may include administrative sanctions such as suspension or dismissal dismissal from office or criminal penalties such as fines or imprisonment. Section 31. Transitory Provision. All incumbent teachers in both the public and private sector not otherwise certified as professional teachers by virtue of this Act shall be given 5 years temporary certificates from the time the Board for Professional Teachers is organized within which to qualify as required by this Act and be included in the roster of professionals. So this section 31 transitory provision is about how the current teachers who are not yet certified as professional teachers will be given a chance to qualify under this law. A professional teacher is someone who has passed the board exam for teachers and has a license to teach. This law creates a board for professional teachers, which is a group of people who will regulate the teaching profession and issue licenses. The current teachers who are not certified will be given temporary certificates, which are valid for 5 years from the time the board is formed. Within those 5 years, they have to meet the requirements of this law and pass the board exam to become professional teachers and be included in the list of professionals. It is also provided, however, that the Professional Board Examination for Teachers or PBET shall still be administered by the Civil Service Commission in the Department of Education, Culture, Sports for the year 1995. So, it says that for the year 1995, the board exam for teachers or the PBET will still be administered by the Civil Service Commission in the Department of Education, Culture, and Sports. These are the government agencies that used to handle the PBET before this law was passed. This means that the teachers who will take the PBET in 1995 will not be affected by the changes in this law and will follow the old system. This is a transitory provision, which means that it is only valid for a short period of time until the new system is fully implemented. Section 32. Separability Clause. If, for any reason, any section or provision of this Act or the application of such section or provision to any person or circumstance is declared unconstitutional or invalid, no other section or provision of this Act shall be affected thereby. So this section 32 means that if one part of the law is wrong or not allowed, the rest of the law is still okay and can be used. It means that the whole law does not have to be thrown away just because one part of it is bad. It is like saying that you can cut off a bad part of a fruit and still eat the rest of it. The separability clause that Section 32 talks about teachers in the Philippines. This law makes rules for teachers in how they should do their job. This section says that if a court says that any part of the law is not allowed, the other parts of this law will not be affected by that. This means that the other parts of the law will still be followed and used for teachers and other people who work with teachers. One possible reason why this law has separability clause is to protect the law and to avoid any problems in using the law. For example, if a law says that one part of the law is wrong, such as the part that says that teachers have to take a test, the other parts of the law, such as the part that says what teachers have to do and not do, will be okay and used. This way, the law can still do its job of making teachers better and more professional in the Philippines. Next is the Section 33, repealing clause. In it states that all laws, residential decrees, executive orders, rules and regulations, or parts thereof, inconsistent with the provisions of this act are hereby repealed or modified accordingly. So, Section 33 of Republic Act 7836 means that any previous laws or rules that are not compatible with this act are no longer valid or changed accordingly. This is to avoid any confusion or conflict in the regulation and supervision of the teaching profession in the Philippines. Next is the Section 34, the Effectivity Clause. It states that this act shall take effect after 15 days following its complete publication in the official gazette or in 2 newspapers of general circulation. So this section is made to ensure that the public is aware of the new law and its implications for the teaching profession in the Philippines.